I want to start with the Upcycled Self. Another, I guess, check on your career as New York Times bestselling author of the Upcycled Self. And it was really, to me, powerful in terms of how you talked about like grief and loss being something not to necessarily hold us back, but being, things that kind of propelled you to the point you are now. I'm interested in was there like a pre-work that you did to come to that point to say, I want to share this with, other folks that might be struggling with grief or loss, particularly as Black men?
Yeah. It's interesting that you asked that question because there was the pre-work would have been the Audible original words and music piece called 7 Years. So 7 Years, which I also collaborated on with Jasmine Martin, my co-author on the Upcycled Self. She's she's my right hand in the game, and we were working, I guess, during pandemic on 7 Years. And I just began to sort of uncover, you got to go through it to get to it. And in the going through it part of the process, there was so much that I was sort of digging up and, emotions and, past trauma and experiences that I never addressed, stuff that I never spoke to in my music, life experiences that people who went to sort of elementary school and high school and college with me weren't even aware of. So yeah, I felt like during that process, I hit something that began to feel, cathartic in a way. So there was that. And then there was the whole second part was just the timeliness of it all, right? I started to, 2017, 18, I would run into longtime Root supporters, people who have been my fans for years. And, they would tell me that for all of their extensive sort of knowledge of my catalog and, all the albums that they had copped and the interviews that they had seen, they still didn't feel as though they knew me as an artist, and that, there was a personal element that was sort of missing from my art. So that became what I strove to articulate, you know what I mean? And just to connect with my audience in a new way and on just a more personal level. And when, people who weren't aware of my story started to find out about my story, they were able to, they saw themselves in some of it, you know what I mean? So there was representation, but people were able to, the takeaway was that it was helpful, you know what I mean? And like my trajectory, the story of my life and my lived experience was, giving folks something substantial that they could then apply to their own, equation. So once I sort of, caught wind of that, that's what we leaned into. And that's, what the Upcycled Self sort of evolved from.
I think what's fascinating about it to me is that oftentimes in hip hop, people do kind of lean on those, experiences. There was a TikTok video that I thought was funny where it was like a rapper in the classroom. And the teacher said something to it, and it was like he pulled his notebook out. Oh, the teacher dissed me. I'm about to write this rap. Right. And it's interesting to me at a time where you saw rappers like really heavily saying like this happened in my past, and I went through this stuff. You chose not to do that and really focus on more the artistry of it. Was that a conscious decision for you to say, even though you're watching kind of people like blow up in a sense off of like this is how my past made me, you like didn't choose to do that in your music in an overt way?
Yeah, I think it was more a conscious decision not to, again, to, add any sort of momentum to stereotypes, tropes, things like that. I didn't want to come off as predictable or, typical in any way, shape, or form. So that's part of it. But then the other part was that the Roots was always a collective. So, I was in like one group that had formed just for a talent show when I was in like 4th grade. And then I was just a solo sort of artist, an MC, right up until I was in 9th or 10th grade, and I met Questlove. So my first group has been the Roots. So this is the only sort of thing that I've been, a part of as, an ensemble. And it's a collective. And my beliefs, my lived experience, the way I feel, my opinion, it isn't the end all be all. It doesn't represent the way everybody in the group sort of feels. And it's always been that way. So yeah, I think it's just been about acknowledging that and sort of respecting that. I think yeah, there's much that I've sort of been able to represent from a personal standpoint as an artist. Social political commentary that I've been able to make.
Absolutely.
Speaking for myself. But yeah, it doesn't always apply. Like I can't always make that sweeping statement about the roots. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think that's why up until now I hadn't really worn my personal story sort of on my sleeve.
Before we close out, I did want to acknowledge your co-collaborator
Absolutely.
on the Upcycled Self, on the School of Thought, the master class that you did, Jasmine Martin,
Yeah.
who's here with us as well.
And when I think about like how I even wound up, I guess at NYU, and you're soon to be Columbia. I'm gonna be at Columbia in the fall. It's from Jasmine and my work. We did this thing called the School of Thought that started at Carnegie Hall, and then we took it to Kennedy Center in D.C. And yeah, then I think between School of Thought and maybe some other stuff that we did during pandemic, I was able to sort of combine that curriculum and all those ideas and come up with the lesson plan for the Art of the MC, which is the name of my class.